Fernanda brings an unparalleled expertise in transparency, digital transformation, and civic engagement, which she's championed in roles as a public official, a civil society leader, and a researcher. One of my abiding memories from a TICTeC planning process that has been quite eventful at points was very early on having a call with Fernanda to discuss this keynote, and all of us just coming off that call super excited. So I'm really thrilled that she's here in person. She's the executive director of the Internet Lab in Brazil, which is an independent think tank focused on human rights and digital technologies. Previously, she's also served as the executive director of Open Knowledge Brazil and worked as a public manager in Sao Paulo City Hall. She's got degrees in journalism and education and a PhD in public administration and government. Her postdoctoral research at the University of Münster focused on smart cities and digital political participation. And Fernanda's going to be taking questions after her talk, so please do add them to Slido as you think of them, or be ready to ask them in the room. And having said that, please do welcome Fernanda to the stage.
Hello. Is this slide? Hello, good morning. I'm truly, truly happy and honored to be here at this year's TICTeC. Well, I know we've been talking a lot about challenges, and I'll have to start by that, actually. Let's be honest, it's not been easy to work at this intersection of technology and democracy. In fact, I think it's never been harder, and I know I'm not alone in feeling that way. Well, first, there's a growing perception, and not without reason, of course, that the technology is more of a threat than an enabler of democracy. And it makes sense. Economic power in tech sector is more concentrated than ever. Surveillance has reached unprecedented levels. Our information environment is flooded with disinformation. The entire internet, actually this central image here, the entire internet has become a synonym for the walled garden business model of the big tech platforms. When we talk about the internet, this is what comes to most people's image. So thankfully, Mariette highlighted the most pressing challenges in her brilliant speech yesterday, so I don't have to revisit them all. But in the middle of that, some core principles we always had in this, we always fought for, open data, open source, are either crumbling down or being captured. So I took it a little bit, the OpenAI logo. We have the API calypso. I don't know how you pronounce the wordplay, but it's quite concerning, right? Data sets, both private and public, being closed or being made private. So in this scenario, insisting that technology can be a vehicle for social justice and more democracy may even sound a little bit naive, right? I know. But second, with AI, they keep moving fast and breaking things. It's hard to keep up. The AI race, the battle among platforms for control over public data or personal data. There's a lot of interesting innovation out there, but also a lot of hype. And amid it all, we hear those voices saying some things like that. This technology is so advanced. We don't need participatory process anymore. We don't need a census. Let's just take big data and analyze people's behavior on social media, and we can infer what they want. Just putting AI on it. I've heard a few times. Somehow, some people call this kind of technology tech for public good. Really? Well, by the way, I wanted to leave a message for some future AI overlord that's listening to this talk in the future. I love AI. AI are amazing tools, okay? I'm cool. So, I'm joking, but of course, even before this chaotic moment, there was an idea that always made me uneasy, even within human rights circles and our social justice groups, that it's this one. Technology is just a tool. What matters is how we use it. Well, that's partially true, but technology isn't an end in itself. Let's be clear. Even if it's not the goal, it shapes the outcome. How it's designed and implemented makes all the difference. Think about AI, machine learning models, large language models. If we treat them simply as tools without questioning their production methods, their transparency, or their data they rely on, then the use in public institutions will drastically reduce people's ability to participate in public life. This is because decisions will be made by algorithms, or some of them are already being made, with no clear criteria, no process shaped by society, or even by elected officials. So with no accountability at all. And that, my friends, I think is the real threat to democracy. So I would like to ask, is it still possible to bring together technology and political participation to strengthen democracy? I believe it is. So recently I found a way to visualize this idea. Last year I had this rare opportunity to step back from the field and reflect during a postdoc research with the amazing Professor José Carlos Vaz and the also amazing Professor Norbert Kerstin in the lovely University of Münster in Germany. And throughout this project called Scope, we conducted, oh, sorry, I'm passing. I did a literature review on smart cities and digital participation. And then when I combined that with 15 years of practical experiences in the field, both in government and civil society, something just clicked. I began to see a pattern in how governments, especially city governments, view citizen participation. And this can be mapped using, now I can change, a simple two axes. And for those who love a compass, yes, there's a compass. Yay. So on the vertical axis, we have the degree to which citizens are able to influence decision-making on public processes. This is a little small, but I think you can see it. How much people can influence in policy making and decision making about public policies. Many of you are probably familiar with participation scales. There is this seminal work of Sherry Ernstein about the ladder of citizen participation from 1969. So this is the idea. I'm not doing this step-by-step graduation here, but you got the idea of an axis that go increasing. And in the horizontal axis, we have the extent to which citizens can engage in the governance of technology and public data. So let's have a look at each quadrant. So the first one is what I'm calling citizens as opinion-giving users. Here, citizens are called to provide some kind of input of a given policy. Initiatives can vary in the importance they give to citizens' opinions, but they don't really have a say. People don't really have a say on the digital infrastructure underlying the initiative or the data being generated. As users of technology, they are given the opportunity to vote, to present their views, to help prioritize issues. Most of the traditional participation initiatives falls into this category, right? So let's look the opposite of that. Citizens as collaborators is when you it's also pretty common, right? I myself have promoted plenty of this kind of participation as a public manager. Here we call people to build technology through hackathons, datathons, design sprints. They don't have to be tech experts. They can help shape data governance, for instance. I coordinated an initiative called Café Hacker in the city of São Paulo, where we would go from department to department and gather civil society and other stakeholders to identify data or transparency demands. And another time, developers met kids from public schools to help build an app for making the school's meals more transparent. We usually present some challenges we have previously prioritized, then call people to build technology to help solve those problems. It's pretty cool, but in general, people are not having a say on the policy itself. They are helping to shape the digital infrastructure and data underlying them. So quite the opposite of the other one. Now let's see what happens when there's neither influence on policy decision making nor on technology governance. Citizens are then treated as censors. Actually, this is quite a common ideology throughout smart cities initiatives. Citizens are mostly data providers, whether they are aware of it or not. Citizens can have their smartphones and can provide data on pretty much anything about the city or their own habits. We saw that in COVID-19, for instance. It was important to visualize the way people were moving around the territory so we could understand the social distancing policies. But most of the time, citizens here can even access the data they help collect. Of course, the more you go to the right of the axis, the more citizens become collaborators. They can actively help to map relevant information about the city and help policymakers to make informed decisions. For instance, using OpenStreetMap data to collect information about the cultural heritage of the city. So you would be more a collaborator than a censor. And now, what happens when you have both influence in the decision-making process and in tech and data governance? Then we have, or we don't. Let me use the keyboard, maybe. Yeah, the keyboard does work. Then you would have what I'm calling here democratic architects. Think about the decision community, which I love. This is the free and open source platform in Barcelona. When they built the platform, they wanted citizens to have a same public policy. But citizens were also given the opportunity to shape the platform, to decide which political functions it would have. We can vote, but we can also work on collaborative drafts. We can have a discussion forum. We may integrate it with AI. Look, I'm not saying the exact same citizen that wants to give their opinion about, I don't know, education or health would be the same one that would help to code the platform or help with the code of the platform. They could if they wanted. It's not that everyone should code or anything like that. This participation in the tech and data layer can assume many forms. We can have, for instance, a multi-stakeholder committee overseeing AI adoption and defining data governance policies. More than 10 years ago, during a Café Hacker meeting at São Paulo City Hall, I saw how bridging people from different backgrounds together can spark real change. One moment I will never forget happened during a meeting like this one, in the picture. A young programmer from the civic movement was passionately advocating for open data and APIs in the meeting with public officials. And sitting in the same room was a 75 years old lady from a grassroots movement. At one point, she stood up, clearly frustrated, to say the less, and interrupted him. She said, "What are you we've been talking about? What are you saying? What is this API thing?" Then there was a pause, and with patience and humility, the young programmer explained clearly and simply what an API was for and why it matters. What happened next is very sweet, because not only she understood it, she started asking for APIs at every meeting in the city hall from that day on. "Oh, what about the APIs?" So it's not just about technology, it's about making space for everyone to shape it. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We can build on successful experiences of civic engagement and even existing participation structures. I came from Brazil, where the first experiment with participatory budgeting took place in 1989 in the city of Porto Alegre. That initiative became a global reference and continues to inspire democratic innovation today. Since our redemocratization 40 years ago, I'm turning 40 this year, so it was the year I was born, Brazil stopped being a dictatorship. So Brazil since then has developed a robust system of participation, including policy councils and national conferences in nearly every area of public policy, from municipal to federal level. And although we have some real threats to democracy right now, we had the storm of the Congress and the three powers in Brasilia. It's just like in the United States. Although we have that threats right now, we also have a vibrant civil society and social movements that actively try to defend those participatory structures against setbacks. This same architecture can and should be activated and updated to address the challenges of the digital era, including data governance and digital infrastructure. Who knows? Maybe this whole crowd will start asking for APIs. So, merging technology and political participation methods with digital governments, by doing that, governments can work with communities to conduct social, technical, and collaborative assessment of AI tools, making this a requirement before adoption. I saw some amazing ideas in yesterday's session on AI governance. I recommend everyone have a look at that. It's recorded. And have a look, check out the CivicTeC field guide, where several of them are already documented. So you are doing already some initiatives in this direction. So again, it's not that every citizen will code. The idea is that we have an enabling environment where an ecosystem of such democratic architects with different interests and skills would flourish. In a digital datafied world, if we want to have a functioning democracy, we can no longer treat technology and political participation as separate spheres. It's no longer acceptable for governments to say, well, you can help us prioritize budget for education or health, but leave data and technology with us is just a tool, because decisions are already being made by algorithms, automated systems about health, education, and so on. So citizens must take ownership of technology to protect democracy. Technology for democracy cannot be closed, because if it is closed, it doesn't reflect a collective process. It can't be shaped by political decision. It becomes opaque. So with these lenses, when we are advocating for technology with transparency and participation, we are actually advocating for democracy. There are many ways to implement technologies that enhance participation. We outlined some of these in our policy brief about AI and participation. There are processes that visualize lived realities and future possibilities, tools to understand complex issues and diverse opinions, spaces to deliberate, discuss, and exchange arguments, methods to deepen engagement and include more people. But at the end of the day, what determines whether technology leverages or threatens democracy is how it treats citizens, as mere sensors in a system or as democratic architects. So, to my fellow architects, we have a lot of work to do. Whether you are in civil society or government or academia, this is time to fight for the inclusion of democracy governance, of technology governance in our democratic equation. So what can we do to push our participation initiatives to this Architects Corner? So let's get to work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fernanda. And if we can bring Slido up on the screen, we already have a couple of questions. Please do add your questions or raise your hand if you want to ask a question. First one, really leading off from your call to action. So for civic tech organizations, do you have thoughts on how we can do that work to include people in our own governance and decision making and be kind of prototypes of that active approach of democratic and technological architects?
Well, I believe you're talking about our organizations themselves, right? To be the example we need. Actually, we can talk about that when I was in Open Knowledge in Brazil, and Julio is here, and he talked about Dear Diary or Querido Diário. It works as an infrastructure. The mindset is, in civil society, the resources are limited. So if we are building some technology that helps, I don't know, our goal was to see public records about technology in government, and we wanted to access public records. But by doing that, we wanted to share this infrastructure with others. So it was not only to serve our goal, but to serve as an infrastructure to other organizations. And this requires governance, of course, requires a community mindset. We have to invest some resources in community management, but we also have the investment pays back. Like you really have interesting results when you have this mindset of sharing infrastructure with other organizations. And then we have we have an API in Dear Diary, and people can use they are already using for lots of other examples. So it's an interesting example because there is a Discord forum with more than 1,600 people. So they're with different backgrounds, but mostly volunteers. They are there just because of this investment in community. So we could not have achieved all of that projects without this investment in community. So I think it's one of the keys.
So the next popular question is asking you to put your researcher hat on and asks if there are gaps in the evidence base that would really help us move tech and democratic innovation forward if we could fill those gaps. What is it that you think we don't know that we need to know?
Definitely. From, I don't know, almost 20 years, we've been grappling with this question about, is the data I'm opening, the governments are opening, are really being used? And some just assume they're not and stop publishing. So we lack evidence based on this area. But also, in this specific question, I think that I always said that when we publish, we create demand. So sometimes we don't have data about the demand because you have to push for this demand. So we should not stick to that to make innovation or to make things move on. But in the civic tech field, we still lack measuring of impact, and we still lack indicators to measure success of initiatives. But on the other hand, if we stick to quantitative indicators, we miss some important results. For instance, coordination with other actors. Sometimes the outcome of the initiative is that you created an ecosystem or you create a community that is using this and that's somehow creating other things that are not directly related to your stuff, but you are creating this environment. So we have to be open about evidence.
It feels like in common with other fields, we kind of swing between a very quantitative understanding and then the more qualitative, the understanding that it's a bit more complicated.
Yeah, and also we lack documentation of initiatives a lot. So when I was with this researcher head, I had a difficult time in finding innovation or finding initiatives. I knew about lots of them being in the field, and I would say, well, why I cannot find anything, or this link's not working anymore. I know they did this stuff, So there's a lot. The unknown things are also because they are undocumented.
Link rot and things that never got
written. There's a culture
up.
of documentation that we need to build.
So the next question, I think, was, let's jump to enthusing more people, more everyday people to get involved in the possibilities of civic tech. How do we get the armies of people shouting for more APIs?
This is not an easy task, but we've been doing in the past years lots of training activities. We have to do that. There's no other way. We can. I really believe that small meetings like those of Café Hacker, and we did several workshops on that. They are like they start to create the culture. If you have a massive online course and then people get there and learn for a couple of hours, there's not going to be so effective as meetups, as people really talking to each other and sharing problems, and then clicking that those problems are going to be solved by technology somehow, that can be solved somehow, that what's missing from me to get my bus on right time is, or to know when the bus is coming is because of an API. We had this, I don't know if you remember some of that, but it was 2013 in Brazil. Things started to get really bad with protests, and it always sparked with the question of the price of buses. It was the 20 cents that increased in price, that sparked some protests, and then it got all over the city and then all over the country. And then we got the president impeached 2 years after that. Well, that was the first coffee hacker ever, with the movement that were protesting against the price. They didn't care about technology at all. They cared about price. The cost of living was too high. And then we had this methodology to put people together in a room. The government usually don't talk openly with people. So when they have the first opportunity to talk with the Secretary of Transportation, they said, well, let's go there. And then there are people from the social movements going in the coffee hacker thing. And then they started talking about the system and how we needed more buses and more things. And then we said, well, we have a limited objective here. We are talking about data. Which information do you need about this request, this demand you have? And then people started to wonder what they wanted. And then in this conversation, someone asked for the API. There was a common request. It was 2013. And then after some developments inside the government, after this request, the chief of the Office of Transportation saw the demand, very concrete. And then he started moving things to get the API opened for the first time. Then we started having the GTFS and the data about buses. So this was sparkled because of this conversation, and things were on fire, literally on the streets. But we put people together in the room to talk about those things. And when they understood that what they were demanding were related to data, and so this would go from policy to policy, from women policy, from health issues, education. Everywhere we did this, this thing clicked. Like, people understood that although they wanted real changes in policy, they had to talk about data or technology together as well. So they start to talk about that. So small conversations, small meetings, meaningful conversations, and really incorporating those demands within public officials, not only tokenization meetings.
And I think the next question perhaps leads on from that, kind of people inside and outside government. How do you convince government, especially local government, to cede control of civic tech infrastructure or civic infrastructure to the citizens on both sides of your model?
Yeah, that was my work throughout this, 20-something years, to convince people that it was important. We have some strategies that go from, we always have to create value for them, right? It's someone talked about that in a session yesterday, like how to convince governments. You cannot just say that it's because the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do, right? It's because we have some real value being added to governments. So when we are at the education department, we opened up systems in GitHub for the first time. And then we partnered with an university of social or computer science students to solve bugs as part of their curriculum. So they would get some points to work for solving public issues about education systems, and as a pedagogical activity. So the government officials realized that they didn't have to invest that much, because they were paying lots of money, they had limited resources, and they started to save resources because they were opening up the code. So those kinds of things, always creating value. I think this is the main tip I can give you, the main idea.
So it's what's in it for them is
Yeah.
the classic way of making somebody interested in what's in it for you is what's in it for them. Do we have questions in the room before we carry on Slido? Does anyone want to pose anything? I will give you a minute to think about it. We'll take another one from Slido and then maybe come back and see if there are questions in the room. So I guess next question is Is the digital world not the way to do it? Is there a case to be made that non-digital analog tools are just better for citizen participation?
Yeah, the point is, it's not only tools I'm talking about. Sometimes it's just conversations. Sometimes tools can facilitate conversations. But what I mean is people being part of the decision, because digital infrastructure will have anyway. It's people are not, governments are not moving away from digital infrastructures. So we are going to have it anyway. So the question is are people being considered in this equation or not? It's not only having a tool to participate, it's about the goal you have. So if your goal is to influence in the decisions, then we just need, like I said, we have councils, conferences, we have all this analog participation infrastructures, and they can serve to this purpose of participating in the tech layer. They're not building tech, they're not coding, but they are influencing the governance. In Brazil, we have the Committee for Internet Governance. It just completed 30 years, and it's an amazing way of building rules and directives for the internet in Brazil. It's a multi-stakeholder committee, and it works fine. And people don't have to have a tool or to build anything to do that. They are actively participating in a very deep infrastructural conversation, but they're not dealing with tech. That's what I mean.
Coming back, do we have any questions in the room? We have a hand up, or two hands up, one at the back of the room and one. You can pick off Martine on the way, right next to you.
Thank you, Fernanda. I really like your talk, and I like your metaphor about citizens as architects. But I want you to go deeper into that metaphor, because in interaction design, we have a discussion about how to conceptualize what an interaction designer is, and an architect is one way, and the other is a stage director, like a theater director. Because the designer will, see everything or see themselves in the middle about choreographing how users come this way and business owners come that way, and they make the stage for everything to happen. And that's another possible metaphor. So, like, when you talk about citizens as architects, what are the exact attributions we want to have to those citizens? Maybe if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, it's a good question. I wanted to give this idea that they are not only building things with their hands, but because they would be collaborators in these quadrants, but they are also conceiving things. They are helping to plan things. They're helping to shape things. And also the idea of an architect is also about creativity. So it has to come up with interesting ideas to fit in some constraints you have about the world. So you have to come up with ideas that will be comfortable, that will be feasible. So it's really about making the world or constructing the world. So it's the idea. But I also talk about an ecosystem because I believe they can have different roles by doing that, by trying to conceive or shape the world. They can help build technology, or they can help give ideas. They are expert in a specific domain, so they will interact with builders to do that. So it's an ecosystem of people that are actively shaping reality, not exactly doing the same things. So I like the way you are thinking about the metaphor, and we can discuss that further, but this was the idea behind it.
I think we have a question over this side, but I have stolen the mic.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask about the ladder of participation and how that might be used differently or maybe evolve due to AI. Whether AI helping citizens like climb up higher up the ladder because power is more equalized, or whether AI being used by the public authority or by the publics might actually require, changing, evolving the ladder itself. Thank you.
Good question. Yeah, the ladder of participation, of citizen participation that I mentioned from 1969 of Sherry Arnsten had several different interpretations and developments, but it can really, it generally talks about you having no say or just a symbolic participation, a tokenization, and then you can be consulted, but your opinion is not being taken into account, or then you may be helping to prioritize things, or helping to vote, and then you can have deliberation, you can have delegation of power. The citizen budget, the participatory budget, it's about that. You have a specific part of the budget where people can really decide where it should go. So this decision is up to the people. This is the idea of the ladder. And then with AI, I think the problem is if you have a system with AI and we are down in the participation ladder, it means that you are probably also down, also more to the left of the, not seeing that, but you are more less involved in tech governance. If you are not involved in tech governance and you are low in the participation ladder, with AI, it would mean to simply implement an AI model that will come up with a decision about something in the city, and people would just have to accept that. It's from their data. It's built upon data collected within the city with citizens, but people are not helping shape this system. They don't know how it works. They don't know exactly which data is being fed on it. So it will be down. If you have this system where people are with public AI helping to shape, being called to shape the system, and actively wanting to incorporate AI within a model, or the deciding community wanting to integrate it, then we can have a democratic architect in that sense, because we are right in the axis of tech governance, and then you are upper in the level of policy making in a specific field, because you are building this AI to achieve a goal you set. Like, you want to shape policy that way, and this AI is just helping me do that. So you are actively saying that the decision is not being delegated somehow. I think it's quite something on this direction, but we can discuss it further.
Thank you for that. I think perhaps the last question we have time for, I'm going to go back to Slido, back to the kind of challenges. So how can we collaborate to navigate impasses such as in Kenya, where the government is viewing public participation through technology as actually an existential threat when things are really bad in that interface between government and people?
Yeah, then we would have a more adversarial way of doing things. This compass I made is the perception of governments. We should ask governments to have on citizen participation. We should build this understanding. But civic tech, there are trying to deal with pressing issues and not being able to collaborate with governments, they don't exactly fit this model, because we're not talking about pure civic innovation. But the question is how to navigate, right?
How can we collaborate in helping people navigate that?
Yeah, but sometimes we have to do, right? In Brazil, although we have this participation cycles and structures, we had an authoritarian government really recently, and we had to do that. We had to build adversarial technology, and we were not welcomed by doing that. So in the flip side, you can have a positive outcome. We saw that during this authoritarian movement in Brazil, because we can civil society tends to be more united on those moments, tend to articulate more on those moments. So technology can help bridge civil society organizations to make this, to stand up against authoritarianism. So sometimes it helps to create this sense of urgency and union. I'm not saying that's a positive thing that happens, but it's sort of an outcome of that. So yeah, I think it's an adversarial approach. Even if we think of Dear Diary, we were scraping public diaries, public records without government's authorization. They didn't want us to do that. They started putting capture in those pages after we started doing that. But we had to do, right? So it's not authorized, but it's something we had to do.
Thank you for that answer. Thank you so much for taking so many questions. Fernanda has very kindly agreed to join us in a panel discussion as well. So whilst we move to the sofas, I'm going to ask you to join me in thanking her for her presentation and keynote responses.